What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Lakers Outsiders podcast. I am Gary Kester, joined today by my right-hand man, the Pau Gasol to my Kobe Bryant, or vice versa, however you want to look at it. Honi Ahmadian is with me. Honi, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty well. I agree with you, but for the next 24 hours or so, maybe 26 hours or so, we are mortal enemies.
This is just going to be a pod of just me and you launching verbal attacks at each other.
I mean, I don't think people would mind if we stopped talking about the Lakers, and talk about Mountain West basketball. Would they? I don't think they would.
Well, I hope Boise State doesn't play like the Lakers did last night.
Do you think the Lakers could, or do you think Nevada could beat the Lakers? I think they could.
We know they'd win the first quarter. That's for damn sure. They'd win the first quarter 32-24. Oh, wow. Great start to this podcast. All right. Well, we are here on the latest version of the Lakers Outsiders podcast to talk about, shocker, the Lakers and their loss, especially to the Cleveland Cavaliers on Sunday evening. Terrible, terrible loss. And we'll look ahead to Tuesday's game against another bad East team, the Chicago Bulls, and hopefully the Lakers can avoid that. And we'll talk more about that. But the main topic right now surrounding the Lakers is, and we're just going to dive right in here, Luke Walton's job security. A lot of fans are basically calling for Luke's head. They want him gone. They want the team to hire a shooting coach, which we'll talk about a little later on in this podcast. Honi, where do you stand on Luke? I mean, are you kind of with the crowd that believes he should be held accountable for last night's loss and he should be on a very hot seat or even be fired?
So here's how it goes, and it's been kind of this way all year. I think Luke deserves a fair share of the blame for games like last night against the Knicks and just their record in general. I just find it hard to believe that you lose to a team that's won 8 games all year before this, and the sole reason for that is your head coach. And you know, we've been harping on it like the entire year. There's a lot of things that Luke could do better, whether it's the rotations or it's the offense as a whole, like the half-court offense especially. Those are legitimate criticisms that you can have for Luke, and I would 100% listen and agree with you. But if you're asking for him to get canned because of some bad losses without LeBron, it's very hard to convince me that firing Luke Walton right now in the middle of the season and replacing him with Brian Rapp scouting reports Shaw is the difference between the Lakers being a good team or a team that might miss the playoffs. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think if Brian Shaw starts rapping the game plan, it might connect well with these younger players, right? They might be more engaged and they might start out faster.
Look, man, we got a lot of rappers on the team. You got Lonzo, you got Pierre. There's a lot of rappers on the team. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, though. A lot of people, because I was tweeting from the account last night, if you weren't following, and a lot of people took my comments as defending Luke, which I guess in a way I was, but I really wasn't. I really wasn't defending Luke. It was more so just saying I don't think it's fair to put all of the blame on him. I think the lack of offensive scheme and things like that go on the entire coaching staff, which includes Luke Walton. I think, the effort coming out flat against teams like the Knicks or the Cavs at home and allowing those teams. Because here's the thing with those types of games, that you usually don't lose those games to bad teams if you hit them first, right? It's when you allow them to establish some confidence in that first half. You let them get off to a fast start, and they go into halftime with a lead, and then all of a sudden they believe, hey, we can beat these guys. We're hanging right with them and all that. Because how often does a team that's that bad overcome, say, a 12-point deficit that you establish early on? And heck, we saw it with the Lakers. They were down 15 and they got close at certain points, they can never really get over the hump. And so that, I mean, that's what the Lakers needed to do to the Cavs, and that's what they need to do to the Knicks. And, you know, it's the slow starts that are killing this team.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think it's fair to put it all on Luke. I think he deserves, you know, a pretty large share of the blame. But at the same time, players have got to make shots. Players got to make open threes. Players have got to make free throws. And like I said, we'll talk about the shooting coach issue and the shooting problems in general later. But I mean, these are capable shooters that have open looks. And the Lakers last night didn't just miss 3-pointers. They missed a ton of free throws. I think they were 8 of 17 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter. That's huge. I mean, that's huge in a game. You lose by 6 points. You missed 9 free throws in the fourth quarter alone. You left a ton of points on the board. There were a lot of layups that they missed. You know, I don't care if you have the best shooting coach in the world. You got to make layups. And a number of guys missed them. You know, Beasley missed one. Kuzma missed one. You know, Lonzo's missed a bunch this year. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, at the end of the day, players have got to play as well. You know, like the blame go to everybody. And it goes, I mean, starts from the top down for me. You know, in the offseason, the Lakers got a lot of criticism for how they built this roster and how they valued playmakers over shooters. And that's totally fine. I think when this team is healthy, you can see that works. There's times where it's looked brilliant. Mm-hmm. You know, that Warriors game especially. Even LeBron, you know, when he goes out, Rondo comes in and he's just creating offense like crazy out there and making the game easier for everybody, and things just kind of flow naturally offensively. But, I mean, you're seeing, you know, 2 injuries to LeBron and Rondo, and now guys are having trouble creating offense and making shots. And granted, the scheme isn't great, but there were a number of wide open shots for capable 3-point shooters last night, like Josh Hart, like Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram. I mean, like, these are capable shooters. And to shoot as poorly as they did last night, you can't put that all on Luke Walton, because there were open shots that were created and they just missed. And, you know, maybe you chalk it up to saying, hey, it's just one of those games. But the Lakers have to avoid that habit of starting slow. And they seem to do this with their home losses, where they fall behind, and then in the fourth quarter with about 3 or 4 minutes left, the light bulb finally goes on and they realize, holy crap, we might actually lose this game. Yeah. Like, let's try and go win it. And, you know, it's like, that's how you should start the game. Put those bad teams in a hole early on, and more times than not, they're going to cave, and you'll probably coast in the second half. And I feel like we haven't seen that a whole lot this year. I feel like the last time was the Hornets game on the road, which of course they were healthy back then, but it's frustrating to see them continue to get off to slow starts. But, you know, I don't think it's entirely fair to put it all on Luke Walton. And I don't think he should be fired right now for what you talked about, Honey. The coaching pool is, if you're hiring mid-season, is much more shallow than it's going to be at the end of the season. And even if you don't hire somebody to come in mid-season, which would be really difficult for a new coach to come in anyways, mid-season, and establish new principles, concepts with no training camp or anything like that. Especially in the Western Conference, where every game is important. But when you look at Luke's coaching staff, who on the staff do you really trust to take over as an interim head coach? You know, I mean, Brian Shaw is the only one with experience as a head coach, and that didn't go well hardly at all. And there's a reason it took him a long time to finally get a head coaching job, even though a lot of people thought, you know, he was kind of next in line for some of those jobs back then. So I don't think Luke should be fired right now. I mean, I think it would take something super, super drastic, like the team dropping, like, I don't know, 10 games in a row, something like that, you know, something pretty wild.
Yeah.
And I mean, the bottom line too is this team is hurt. This team is injured. They were missing Kuzma for a few games. Tyson Chandler's been banged up. KCP got banged up last night. There's no LeBron. There's no Rondo. And, you know, people want to discount that for whatever. But LeBron and Rondo are super important to this team. I mean, those are your veteran leaders for each unit, right? LeBron's obviously your anchor for the whole team, but he's your number one option. He's your MVP. He's your superstar that, you know, holds down that starting lineup. And then Rondo does the same thing for the second unit. So, I mean, I think it's fair to, and there's been, you know, the report, I think, from Ramona Shelburne that said the Lakers aren't really putting this on Luke because the team's been so banged up. And even, just having Kyle Kuzma out there, even though he hasn't shot the ball well from 3 this year, has been just having him out there makes a pretty big difference in terms of spacing and how defenses cover, their coverages. So the injuries are they're killing this team once again. I don't know what we have to do. I don't know what we've got to sacrifice to get the injuries to leave this team alone. But I mean, they're just a killer right now. And it's not fair to put that entirely on Luke Walton. So I don't know. I think we both agree that he shouldn't be fired right now, though.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the injury thing that you're talking about, especially with LeBron, like every single person being hurt is obviously just adding to it. But the LeBron thing is just so pronounced because every team that LeBron has ever been on, this happens too, because your offense is 100% centered around the best player in the world, as it should be. Mm-hmm. So when he goes out, everybody's role changes. This is a little bit of a spoiler alert for something I'm writing that should be out tomorrow morning. But the Lakers or the Cavs in this last 4 years that LeBron played there are something like 4-23 when he doesn't play. Mm-hmm. Every single year, their offensive rating drops drastically when in games that he doesn't play versus the ones that he does play. And I think if you compare this year's Lakers team, actually, the drop-off has actually been less than 2 of the 3 years where he's missed any playing time on the Cavs. So I think, yes, it's really frustrating, and there are games like the Knicks and the Cavs especially where you're like, even without LeBron, you should be winning those games. But it makes sense to me why they're struggling so much, especially offensively, without this guy that creates all the offense, that draws all the attention. It throws everything off completely for the team.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, that's a great point. And I think, I mean, the Rondo injury, I think, is something that is a bigger injury than most people realize, and most people really kind of label. But it's frustrating, because I mean, it's funny because of how dark things are right now for the Lakers and Laker fans. When it's like Christmas Day, that team was rolling at that point. I mean, they were playing good basketball. I mean, after they had started 0-3 and then 2-5, I mean, they had played really well basically up until that point. They had the one bad loss, I think, right before that to the Grizzlies, and maybe they were caught looking ahead to the Christmas Day game. I don't know. But this is also kind of what you get with a young team, right? That doesn't have its core veteran presence out there with LeBron or Rondo. I mean, you've got guys like JaVale McGee and Tyson Chandler. You've got some veterans on the team, but I think it's a lot different than having a LeBron James, who's such an amazing leader with a high IQ that can really direct guys and just create so much. And Rondo too. I mean, Rondo's trying to coach from the bench, but it's a little different, not being on the floor. And I don't know. It's frustrating. The injuries are really frustrating. Hopefully they'll be back soon. It sounds like LeBron is continuing to progress and improve, but we don't really know when he's going to be back. Rondo was saying, I think either yesterday or today, that he's starting to be able to do some things with that injured hand, like dribble and maybe shoot. So hopefully they'll be back soon. I think that'll help erase a lot of issues, and we'll talk about that a little later on. But so the follow-up question to that first one would be, if the Lakers lose on Tuesday, tomorrow, at home to another really bad team in the Chicago Bulls, do you think then would that change your mind? Should Luke get fired, or do you think he gets fired? How do you think that would all go?
I don't think he should be fired. It would be kind of hypocritical of me to say everything that I just said and be like, yeah, after the Bulls game. Now that's the line.
one game later.
You lost to the Knicks, you lost to the Cavs, but the Bulls, how dare you? But that being said, it would I think his seat is pretty warm right now. I hope that it's safe that Rob and Magic wouldn't make the what I would think is a hasty decision to let him go and see what happens from there. It's definitely these are the type of games that if a coach gets fired, you point out and you say, this is the reason why. Just because you can't be dropping valuable games to these worst teams with the playoff race being as close as it is. And I think the Jazz are losing to the Pistons right now, but they are tied with the Lakers in the standings, and the Lakers just have the tiebreaker right now. So they're dangerously close to falling out of the playoff picture, at least for now. So that said, like, I personally, if I were in charge, I would not be firing Luke Walton, even if they lost to the Bulls tomorrow. I hope that that's not something that we have to even think about, and that they come out and win by 20 points and give us something to be happy about for like 24 hours before we yell at each other for something else. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they lost and he was fired immediately, but I don't think that will happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but I agree. I don't think it will happen. Like I said earlier, I'd be really surprised if Luke gets fired midseason at any point.
Yeah.
We've heard reports that Magic can be kind of volatile. I always have problems saying that word. But I just don't see it for reasons that we talked about earlier. The coaching pool, and especially because if you hire somebody mid-season and say they're a train wreck, say you hire a Mark Jackson or a Jason Kidd, God forbid, and say they're a train wreck for the second half of the season, it's not like you're going to fire him after half a season, right? You're going to want to give the guy a fair chance and give him a full off season and a training camp and all that. And it's like, at that point, it's almost like you're wasting time.
Yeah, you were saying earlier.
So I don't see a mid-season firing happening, especially unless the only way I could really see it is if the team continues to lose when they get LeBron back. When they get LeBron and Rondo back and they continue to drop these games, then I think he's in trouble. But a situation that I kind of thought about, because those of you who don't know, I'm a Tennessee Titans fan, and it's something they kind of went through after last season with Mike Mularkey as their head coach. There were a lot of reports, and it wouldn't surprise me at all, that the team was unhappy with the offense. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. And they told Mike Mularkey, we will keep you as head coach, but you have to make a change at offensive coordinator. And I mean, they were completely right in saying that because the schemes were awful and they weren't maximizing hardly anybody on offense. And Mularkey said no and got fired. Basically, they parted ways or whatever. I could see a scenario like that happening where Luke gets sat down and says, hey, we think you're a good leader of this locker room. We think the players still respond well to you and they like playing for you. But you've got to do something with your staff. You've got to make some changes. You've got to get somebody in here that knows X's and O's a little better, understands offensive schemes, and will implement that kind of stuff, and will develop the players. Because I think, quite frankly, a lot of times the young players haven't really grown a whole lot because they're not being utilized the right way. And Brandon Ingram, I think, is the biggest example of that. He's such a guy to me that thrives on catching the ball in rhythm on the move.
Yeah.
And way too many times is he catching the ball and he's standing 25, 30 feet from the basket, just in a standstill position, a stationary position, and they just run an ISO or a high screen and roll and just a basic action. And those are things he's not good at. The numbers show it. He's not good, in those positions. And a lot of times they result in contested 2-point shots, contested 2-point jumpers, which are not high efficiency shots. We've seen him make some of those, but they're not shots that you want. He's a guy that with his length should be able to get to the rim. And I think you do that by putting him more off ball and finding ways to get him the ball on the move, even if it's a simple dribble handoff. His numbers with dribble handoffs, it's a pretty small sample size, but they're really good, which just kind of emphasizes the point. You've got to get him the ball on the move. And it's frustrating because this coaching staff as a whole has not seemed to figure out that that's how he needs to play, which would make him an ideal fit next to LeBron James, which we haven't really seen so far. They've kind of had their issues. So how they're utilizing the talent is frustrating. But back to the main point, I don't see Luke getting fired mid-season. But I do either see him getting fired at the end of the season, or a scenario where they sit him down and say, you need to make changes to your coaching staff and you need to get an assistant that knows offensive schemes and X's and O's and can utilize the players better. And I had this thought earlier today, and I'm not advocating for Mike Brown being a good head coach, but I will give the guy credit. One thing he always did, he had a damn good coaching staff filled out. Yeah. He had really good assistants, especially that staff he had with the Lakers was amazing.
It was incredible.
That his assistants were really, really good.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times he would defer to those guys. I was reading a lot about how he would, like, even during timeouts, he would let, guys like Quinn Snyder, draw up plays and things like that. So that's what the Lakers need. They need a better coaching staff. And I get Luke likes his Arizona buddies is what everybody terms it, his Arizona buddies or his Arizona pals, because they're familiar, and I think that's important for a coach to have people he's comfortable with. But I don't think a change really needs to be made to the head coaching position right now, but the staff needs to be filled out better.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't really have to talk about this, but a name that's kind of popped into my head the last couple of days that I don't think, I haven't really seen anybody who is a fan of the Lakers or writes about them or whatever has mentioned is Fred Hoiberg. His time with the Bulls obviously didn't go very well, but he wasn't really given a fair shake with the roster that they built him. It's not the type of roster that he needs. But he's supposed to be a pretty really, really smart offensive coach, and who knows if he wants a head coaching job somewhere or not. But if they can lure him out to be an assistant with all the money that they got, he can help them with the offense, and he's pretty tall, so he can play beach volleyball with Luke.
Perfect fit.
So yeah, that's somebody I think people should keep an eye on.
Yeah, and that's interesting, and that'll be, like you said, we don't have to talk about it. That'll be a discussion for another day on coaching candidates and whatnot. But yeah, I think they definitely got to make some changes to the staff at some point, maybe mid-season or at the end of the season. Most likely end of the season, I would think.
Yeah.
One of the changes that I would like to see, and I think everybody would like to see, is adding a shooting coach to this roster, because it was reported, I think it was by Pete Zayas, who was Laker Film Room. Everybody knows who he is now.
He's too big time for us. There was a time when we used to aggregate Pete's videos on our website.
That's true. Pizza was a very nice guy. I remember meeting him at Las Vegas Summer League, but that's beside the point.
He plays the piano really well too. Just letting you know, he's multi-talented.
I did see that video. Pete, check should be in the mail, by the way. But yeah, no. I think he was the one that reported it, though, that the Lakers don't have a shooting coach, which I thought was very interesting, because that's kind of, I figure that was kind of standard for an NBA coaching staff or even a college team, really. I would like to see them add one. Honey, this team has been shooting terribly lately. How much do you think a shooting coach would really help this team? Okay,
so like you said, I don't think there's a lot of NBA teams that employ them. I would have to fact check that. I'm not sure. And also, in the last couple of hours or so, KCP's personal shooting coach tweeted that he got a job with an NBA team. So who knows if that's the Lakers or not, but just something to keep an eye on. I don't think it would change much this season. I just don't I don't think I might be wrong, but I don't think coaches, even shooting coaches, like tinkering with shots during the middle of the year. I don't think players should want that, because that seems like a disaster waiting to happen if they screw something up.
And it's a hard habit to break.
Yeah, exactly. But if they do hire one over the summer, who knows? It could be huge, because with some guys, it probably won't matter. They're bad shooters or whatever. At some point, you just got to chalk it up to that and say it's not really going to change much. But with guys like Lonzo, who has a really inconsistent form that even I can tell is an inconsistent form. With those guys, I think it could help. Especially since Lonzo's free throw shooting is just dive bombing since like high school, like his last year of high school.
He was a good free throw shooter in high school.
And then like UCLA was like, yeah, it's kind of sketchy. And then in the NBA, he's just been god awful. But hey, man, if DeAndre Jordan can shoot like 80% from free throws all of a sudden, I feel like something can change for the Lakers.
Yeah, whoever's responsible for that, can we hand that person a blank check?
I know, like literally give him a check, let him write as many zeros as he wants on it, and get that guy to LA.
Yeah, because if he can fix DeAndre Jordan's free throw shooting, you would think he could fix Kyle Kuzma's and Brandon Ingram's and maybe not Lonzo's, but but yeah, I mean, I think it's something. I mean, that they got to at least try it at this point. You know, it might not help. I think if they did, it would help marginally. I don't think, because I think especially Lakers Twitter has been kind of brainwashed into the idea that hiring a shooting coach is going to turn this team into a bunch of sharpshooters. And I don't think that's going to happen. You know, will it help their free throw percentage? Maybe. But I mean, a large part of free throw shooting is mental. And I think some of these guys go up to the line almost halfway expecting to miss. I think Ingram thinks about it too much. I think Lonzo's definitely in his head.
Yeah, 100%.
And, you know, I don't know. I think it's largely mental. And for some reason, bad free throw shooting seems to be contagious. So when one or two guys can't make free throws, all of a sudden the whole team can't. Yeah. And we saw that last night. It was like everybody, like, you get a turn, and nobody could make 2 free throws. So, I mean, I think it could help. I mean, I don't think it could really hurt.
Yeah.
But for everybody that thinks just hiring a shooting coach will automatically fix this team's shooting problems, I don't think that that's the case. I think it could help, but it's not going to completely fix the issue. There have been NBA teams that employ a shooting coach that were still not good at shooting.
It's the same thing as Luke Walton, right? Like, firing Luke Walton isn't going to fix all your problems. Maybe you get somebody that fixes some of the problems that he had, and then maybe that person doesn't do as good of a job with the defense, and that's an issue. It's the same thing with the free throw coach. Like, yeah, a shooting coach might help somebody out, but he's not magically going to make these guys shoot better than 34% from the three-point line or whatever it is that they're shooting. Lakers are like the worst catch and shoot team in the league. They're getting wide open looks, and they're like breaking every single. I was really mad from last night. Sorry.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier, they're capable shooters too. Like Josh Hart, like Kyle Kuzma, who was really good last year, and all of a sudden
under 30% for the year. Like, I don't think that's magically, like, not having a shooting coach this year versus last year is what caused Kyle Kuzma not to be able to shoot threes anymore.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. What's Steve Nash up to? I bet he can teach.
Yeah.
He still owes the Lakers one, right? He got a ton of money to not really.
How like we bring Steve Nash here from the Warriors and he'll like break his back again or something.
Probably he'll be out and can't make it to the facility. Oh, Steve Nash. But yeah, I mean, the shooting problems, and I want to bring up one thing that a lot of people brought up to me on Twitter last night from the account, was that I think people took a quote from Luke Walton out of context, because he was asked about Lonzo Ball's free throw shooting and what, he could do to improve his free throw shooting. And one thing Luke suggested was get to the free throw line more. And everybody took that as that's the only way he's going to fix it, is if he just shoots more free throws. And it's like, that's not what he said. And it was an answer specific to Lonzo, and people took it as a specific answer to the entire team in general. But what his point was, if Lonzo gets to the line more, it's a little easier to establish a rhythm if you shoot 6 to 8 free throws a game.
Yeah.
And that'll help. I mean, that'll help you as a shooter in general. If you get to the line, you knock down a couple free throws and you see that ball go through the net. For me as a player, just seeing that ball go through the net, it boosts your confidence so much.
The funny thing about this is literally every person in the history of humanity who has talked about basketball has said, hey man, get to the line, get a couple shots to go through the net, and you'll get your rhythm back. But when Luke Walton says it, just like, damn, how could you say this?
Yeah, and it's like, well, to his point too, he was like, Lonzo shoots, he averages 1 free throw a game. It's like 1.2 free throw attempts per game for Lonzo. And it's like, that's his point exactly. Is like, if that number goes up more and he shoots, say, 5 or 6 free throws a game, he'll probably start to establish a rhythm and get in-game reps. Because the Lakers, people act like the Lakers don't practice free throws. I have seen so many videos tweeted out from beat reporters about the Lakers staying after practice and shooting free throws and just shooting and shooting and shooting. It's like they're working on it, but you can't replicate practice free throw reps and game reps. They're totally different. You're in the flow of the game. You know, you might be tired. You know, there's a building of 20,000 people. There's noise. There's all that stuff. There's the situation of the game. You know, it's impossible to replicate. So I think what Luke Walton said was a valid point. Getting more game reps could be something that helps him. You know, and Lonzo mechanically has a lot to fix with his free throw shooting. He's just kind of all over the place. But I think for now, I mean, I don't think that was anything crazy that he said, but everybody took it as, oh, that's the only way we can fix our free throw shooting is if we just shoot more. It's like, that's not at all what he said. So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, a shooting coach would probably greatly help this team. I mean, well, maybe not greatly, but I think it would help. It's worth a shot, and I'd like to see them bring somebody in. But hey,
while we're ranting, another thing. Magic Johnson, like multiple times, has said how they don't want to like completely change Lonzo's shot because he shot well at UCLA, like from the 3-point line. Mm-hmm. But like people over the last 2 days have been digging up this old tweet from an exit interview where I guess like Luke said that the Lakers don't need a shot doctor for Lonzo, and this is their proof that it's Luke's fault.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, man. And I mean, I said earlier, you kind of have to look, hold accountability from the top down. And the way this roster was built, they didn't emphasize shooting. And Magic was asked specifically at Summer League, I think it was during the title game, about the construction of the roster. And they said they valued guys that, could create offense and make plays. And they didn't value guys that were just shooters. And I think it's valid. I mean, obviously the ideal situation is to, get guys that can do both. But I think they looked at those Cavs teams and, really looked at that and said, well, especially when Kyrie was gone, but they just said, well, they just tried to put, shooters around LeBron and had him do everything. We don't want to put him under that kind of physical stress. And we want to have guys that can create around him and make things a little easier for him. So, I mean, it's a valid, reason and, to construct the roster that, in the manner that they did. But, shooting there wasn't an emphasis on shooting. And sometimes when you do that, the result is a team that probably isn't great at shooting. So I think we'd both agree it'd be nice to see a shooting coach hired, but I think fans need to kind of chill on the fact that they think it's going to just solve all the shooting issues. This team is not, if they hire a shooting doctor, they're not going to be a 90% free throw shooting team as a whole. It's just not going to happen. There's just too many bad free throw shooters on this team. Yeah. So, all right. Next topic. The starting lineup may be changing. Luke Walton hinted at that in a press conference last night after their loss to the Cavaliers. Honi, if you had to change the starting lineup right now with LeBron and Rondo still out, what change would you make?
I'm honestly not sure. I saw that quote and I was like, I guess it makes sense. You've had a lot of bad starts in a row to games. I'm just not sure what the best option is. I've seen some people say maybe Beasley over Hart. I get that. Like Michael Beasley, shout out to him. He's been incredible over the last week or so, and he is dealing with so many things that are much bigger than basketball. But he's been total pro even without as many minutes, and in the last week or 2 weeks or whatever, he's been incredible. Like, he's played really well.
That's probably my biggest criticism of Luke right now is that Beasley should get more minutes.
Yeah.
And I think somebody asked about it, so we'll talk about it a little later on. But go ahead.
Okay. So I could see how that might work. My issue with that is like Beasley and Kuz really play similarly. And Beasley's not much of a shooter, even though he scores really well and efficiently. He doesn't really shoot threes. So I don't know if that would work. I guess the other person I could see is maybe Svi getting a starting nod over like Josh Hart. You're not losing too much defensively. Like he's pretty okay there for a rookie. And his shooting hasn't been like crazy good to start his rookie year, but maybe if he's in the flow of the offense with a couple better playmakers or something, you could see him knocking down a couple more shots because Josh Hart has been in a massive slump for a week or two now. So I think if I had to change the lineup in any way, I think that's what I would do. I would put Svi Mikhailuk in for Josh Hart.
So I'll go with two ideas that are different. The first one I'm not as sold on. I'll just throw it out there, and you're not going to like it.
Oh, no. Oh, no. I already know.
I would consider starting Tyson Chandler over JaVale McGee because I think defensively there's not a huge drop-off there. JaVale has been really good defensively, I think, for the most part this year. So I think Chandler is good too. And it depends on his health. I don't know if his back is still bothering him. He only played 3 minutes last night. So I would think, Zubats played 10 minutes. I wouldn't start Zoo. I would start Chandler just for the fact that his screen setting, I think, creates a lot of things for this team offensively. And I'd like to see him get more minutes than 3. That's for sure. But like I said, maybe his back is still bothering him. So if he's healthy, I'd like to see him kind of throw him out there and see how he reacts. Because I think the numbers actually with the 4 young guys that are starting right now, plus Chandler, have been really actually pretty good this year. I can't remember the exact stat, but it's a positive net rating. So it's something I would take a look at if he's healthy, but I'm still not convinced that he is yet because a back injury, especially for a big guy, will probably linger quite a while, especially if he's setting a lot of screens and rebounding and all that. So that's one idea. And you have JaVale off the bench. And because I think JaVale is a guy that fits better with LeBron out there. I think he's probably suffered the most with the LeBron injury because LeBron creates a lot of easy opportunities for him. And I think they've just developed good chemistry already this season. Yeah. So maybe you try Chandler until LeBron gets back, or I don't know. And then another one is, I guess a pretty simple thing. I would think about starting KCP over Josh Hart, because
that's a good one.
KCP, I think provides a lot defensively still. He's not, always great defensively, but I think for the most part, he's pretty solid on that end. And he's one of the, I don't know if he's the most reliable shooter for the Lakers. He might be, but he's definitely one of them.
Definitely has a free throw shooter. I think, believe it or not, Ivica Zubats is the best free throw shooter on the team right now at almost 90%. And then KCP is like 1 percentage point behind him.
Yeah. And then it drops like 13% to Kyle Kuzma. So yeah, it's bad. But let me look at KCP's shooting splits this year. He's been up and down, I think, for the most part. Like last night, he was 0-6 from 3, but 2 of 9 overall. But he did get what looked like a knee to his ribs. I was watching him run in the second half, and he looked like he was running pretty gingerly still, and he looked like he was kind of stiff. So it's not a Laker game until somebody gets hurt.
Yep.
But I think that was bothering him. So again, if he's healthy, I would think about putting him out there. He's shooting 35.2% from the 3-point line this year. So that's solid. It's not, amazing, but it's probably, above average, I would say.
I think it's definitely, I'm obviously, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I'm 99% sure that it's better than all the other high volume guys on the team. I think like Lance and Rondo might shoot better than him percentage-wise, but they're not shooters. They don't shoot.
Yeah, they don't shoot a ton. Yeah, he shoots 4.5 threes a game. So, and 88.5% from the free throw line. So, hey, let's get KCP to the line. So yeah, that's what I would do. I think Hart is better suited coming off the bench. I think he's that type of player. I think he, offers a lot of value.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure he's a starter.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if he's knocking down threes, that changes a lot.
Yeah.
Like exactly. the Grizzlies game on the road, the one I went to, he was lighting it up. And when he's hitting, a lot of guys on this team, their value depends on their 3-point shooting. Like to me, Kyle Kuzma is a totally different player when he's hitting threes. And it's the same thing with Brandon Ingram. The same thing with Josh Hart and Lonzo. The young guys, it's going to depend on them hitting threes because that opens up a lot of different things for them.
Yeah.
Because when they're not, they get played a certain way and it just makes it very difficult for them. But those are the two things I would suggest. My personal choice of those two would be KCP. But again, if he's banged up and he's got messed up ribs, that's kind of tough. So
yeah,
I would just like this team to get healthy. That's my lineup suggestion. Let's get healthy and then stay healthy.
That would help. I think it was their New Year's resolution to get healthy, because if not, it should have been.
Well, I did write an article, 19 New Year's resolutions for 2019, and number 1 was get and stay healthy. And they're not
listening.
Yeah,
they're not listening. I know you're reading our articles, Luke.
And training staff, come on, get it together.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised though if we see a different starting lineup tomorrow. Just not two bigs. They did try the two bigs thing, and I don't think. I credit Luke for trying different things at certain times. That didn't work. I don't think we've seen it ever since. So I'll give him credit for that at least. But yeah, probably not the best idea. Maybe 10 years ago. All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about before we dive into some of these questions, we've talked about the LeBron and Rondo injuries. And I saw a lot of people suggesting that LeBron and Rondo coming back isn't going to fix this team. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Depends on what you mean by fix.
Not losing to 8-win teams.
Yes. If that is your standard, a very low one, I think that fixes it.
Those are the only standards I have, honey.
It shows in your podcast partners. I said this on Twitter either today or last night. I don't remember. All the days meshed together. My opinions on the Lakers have not changed at all this year, basically. From preseason until now, I thought they were always a decent team that was going to have a chance against any team in the playoffs, excluding the Warriors, because they have LeBron James and they have solid role players. I don't think that's going to change from now until the end of the year. They could lose to anybody. They could be the 8th seed and get swept in the first round, or they could end up getting home court advantage and get into the Western Conference Finals. Either one of those, I would believe in. I would even believe in them as in the playoffs the way they're playing right now. That said, of course, LeBron coming back on the team is going to change a lot of things. Like, that is literally the greatest player in the world. Still in his prime, even though he's 34 years old or whatever he is now, and drinking wine every night.
Glass of wine a day is good for you.
Yeah.
For your heart, at least.
Is it good for the groin? I hope.
Heck, if it's good for the heart, Josh Hart should try it. Maybe he'll start knocking down some threes again.
So yeah, it's going to change things. It's going to fix a lot of issues. It's not going to fix all of them. LeBron doesn't make everybody a good shooter because they just need to be good shooters. You get some better looks though, and the team plays better as a whole when he's on the floor. Same with Rondo too, for the most part. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, well, it's like I said earlier, this team was playing good basketball before they lost. They lost LeBron and Rondo in the same game.
Yeah.
So that's kind of brutal. I think when Rondo punched Chris Paul, I think Chris Paul's injury proneness rubbed off on him because it's been hand injuries. It's been
both times. He's played like 11 games this year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel like because somebody was asking me about would you rather have Julius Randle instead of Rajon Rondo. And I'm like, we haven't even had Rondo. So it's like, yeah, I would. Plus Julius is my son. So of course I'd love him to be on the Lakers.
Hey,
but
shout out to D'Angelo Russell, by the way. Good game. And
shout out to shout out to like all the former Lakers. Thomas Bryant too. Jeez.
Yeah, attaboy.
But yeah, no, those two coming back and LeBron especially are going to fix a lot of issues. I mean, look at what LeBron did with that Cavs team last year. That was a sorry supporting cast. And he dragged them. I know it's the Eastern Conference, but he dragged them to the NBA Finals. And they were on the verge of going up 1-0 if J.R. Smith doesn't – J.R. Smith, that whole rebound and that whole situation. So he's going to – I mean, those two I think will – not only help because they're both good players. LeBron's a great player. I think they're both impactful players and they mean a lot. Like I said, LeBron means so much to the starting lineup, especially, and Rondo is big for that second unit. And I think you don't have to play Lonzo like as heavy with Rondo there for support. And you don't have to put Brandon Ingram at point guard as often and running, high screen and rolls and all that stuff. So I think guys just go back to their natural roles, which will help. The gravity that LeBron provides, that frees a lot of guys up. Plus, he's the best basketball player in the world. That usually is a good thing when he's on the floor. So, yeah, I think those two coming back and even just LeBron coming back fixes a lot of issues. And I think there's going to be a lot less instances where they have bad losses, especially at home. So yes. I think the biggest thing for this team right now is just getting healthy. It's not firing the coach. It's just getting healthy. That's going to be pretty much it. So, all right. Well, that's it for our topics. Let's dive into these questions before we sign off. These are pretty wide range of topics. But first question we got was, should we trade everyone? If it's for Anthony Davis, I'll think about it. Not just for anybody, though. I mean,
come on, let's not
trade them all for me. I want an NBA paycheck.
Yeah, man.
And then a follow-up question to that was, on a serious note, why didn't Beasley get more playing time? Why do you think he hasn't gotten more playing time?
I'm not sure, and I think whoever sent this in probably mostly meant last night, where I think Beasley only played like 7 minutes or something when he had been playing really well. I'm not sure. I don't know if there's an injury that we don't know about. I'm sure, he hasn't played a lot. I can understand his conditioning not being great. I can understand him feeling, getting sore and whatnot a little bit more quickly because of just the amount of playing time he's had and how much he's been away from the team. If it was a coaching decision, I don't really understand it. I think he should play more. And I am all in favor of basically giving all of Lance Stephenson's minutes to Michael Beasley. I think that's the smartest thing they could do. Also, I was going to mention this earlier, and it's related to this. Once the trade deadline has passed and the buyout market clears out and everything, I think you're going to see the rotation getting fixed a lot more. Luke does the same thing that Steve Kerr does, where he plays 12 guys a game. Hashtag strength in numbers. I think once they're in the stretch run of the season, he's gonna figure out who his 8 or 9 guys that he trusts are and play those guys heavier minutes. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. And I agree with you. I think the only thing I can think of with Beasley is he's only been back for a handful of games after being away for quite a while. And maybe his conditioning just isn't up to par yet. And he can really only play in short spurts right now. So that would be my thing. And maybe he just doesn't have enough reps to, I don't know. To me, it's probably a conditioning thing. Or maybe it's just Luke isn't great with rotations. Who knows? Yeah. Next question was kind of on the same topic as the first question. Should we be seriously considering flipping some of the young guys for Bradley Beal now with a view to put him in a package for Anthony Davis at season's end?
Okay, so here's the thing with that. If that was what you're going to have to send off pretty much most of your assets to get Bradley Beal and then give that same thing to Anthony Davis, and I don't think like they have enough to do 2 trades for superstars. Basically, like trade for one star and then trade him for a better star. I don't think they have enough for that. The line of thinking of trading for Bradley Beal is really interesting to me because Beal has played like amazing this season, especially once John Wall went out with that injury. I think he has 2 40-point triple doubles this year. Like he is a legitimate superstar.
I was gonna say he's the best player on their team now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Either him or Thomas Bryant.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I understand the people that say, hey, let's just trade for Bradley Beal now. There's your second star for LeBron. Figure it out later. I'm still of the mindset that they should remain patient and try to get a second star through free agency and then trade for their third guy. Just because I think it's really difficult, like in this NBA, to have 2 really good NBA players, 2 superstars, and not a lot of depth and role players alongside them. Now, if you can like get Bradley Beal for cheap for some reason because the Wizards are dumb and a dumpster fire, then yeah, by all means throw away that plan and figure it out. But if you have to throw in Lonzo and Ingram and picks or whatever to get Bradley Beal, I don't think it's worth it right now.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense from a time perspective, I guess, to just wait and see what you do in free agency first. I mean, they've been gearing up for this. Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka have been gearing up for, having 2 max slots in terms of their cap space and free agency ever since they took the job. So they're not going to just ditch on it now when there's going to be guys like Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Klay Thompson, Jimmy Butler. Those guys are going to be, free agents this summer. How attainable they might be, who knows? A lot can change from now until then. But they've been gearing up for that. They're not going to just ditch it now.
And like, I forgot what I was going to say, but my main point is this. Yes, Bradley Beal is amazing. You're always going to be able to find some star player that's disgruntled or their team isn't doing well and try to trade for them. Even like you and I are saying that they're guaranteed to sign a superstar free agent this summer. There's a lot of stuff that suggests that they might not. Kawhi might stay in Toronto, and if he wants to leave, it seems like the Clippers would be his first option. Jimmy Butler doesn't really seem interested in the Lakers. Klay Thompson's going to stay in Golden State. He's never leaving there. Kevin Durant might leave, but he might go to New York. Who knows? So there's no guarantee that they get anybody, which is why a lot of people are in favor of trading for Bradley Beal. But my thinking is this: if you strike out in free agency anyway, you still have those assets and you can trade them for somebody. It might not be Bradley Beal good, but it could be, I don't know, Mike Conley and his massive contract good or something like that. Yeah. Like you're going to be able to find somebody that's a good second player for LeBron.
Yeah. And, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of funny to me because a lot of people paint Luke as the sole issue of the Lakers. It's like, so if they get Bradley Beal, wouldn't you just think Luke will ruin him too? So, no, I think like I love Bradley Beal. I think he's a hell of a player, and I think he'd be an awesome player, especially next to LeBron James. Yeah. But the timing just doesn't fit with what the Lakers have been gearing up for. They've been gearing up to try and get a max guy last year. I think their idea was to get LeBron and Paul George, and it sounded like that had a chance of happening until Paul George backed out. But they got LeBron, and then, they turned to this upcoming offseason, and they've saved – they got rid of Luol Deng and, made the moves that they had to do to free up that cap space. So they're not going to just abandon that ship now. That's going to be their thing. And if you can get a Kawhi Leonard or a Kevin Durant or, one of those guys to just simply add to this roster with LeBron and the young core, then that's a really good team. So I think that's kind of their thinking right now. So I don't think a Beal trade, as much as I like him, is going to be on the table for the Lakers. All right, next question. Basically, it was asking about the shooting. Said, with or without LeBron, can they make improvements with their free throws or their three-point shooting as the season goes on? I think it's hard for them to really get worse. But, yeah, I think...
You would think it's hard for them to get worse, but...
Yeah. Yeah, I say that now. They'll shoot 2 for 30 at 3-point line tomorrow and 4 for 20 on the free throw line. But I think they can make improvements. I mean, like I said, it's been very poor. And I think adding LeBron and Rondo even back to the lineup, LeBron's shooting, his 3-point shooting especially, was off to a really slow start. And then he really started to knock down threes kind of as time wore on. So hopefully he comes back and can help that by himself. But I think the looks that he'll create for other guys, eventually some of these guys are going to start hitting some of these wide open threes. Yeah. That's just what I think. So I think it'll get better at some point, but I just wouldn't expect this team to be sharpshooters. So, all right, next question. Say Luke Walton gets the chop. Would you be concerned if the front office went with another nepotistic hire like Mark Jackson? Who would you prefer to see in that role? A short term for the rest of the season, or B, long term? How would you feel about Mark Jackson? Because I already know I'm gonna agree with you.
Not great, Bob.
That's pretty much what I was gonna say.
I just don't want Mark Jackson walking into the practice facility yelling, "There goes that man," as Luke Walton is packing up his stuff. Mark Jackson's not a good NBA coach, man. Like, I don't know what to tell people. And it says a lot about him that people credit him for kind of starting the Warriors dynasty a little bit, even though
they were 6 seed 2 years in a row, and then all of a sudden when he left, they were the best team in the West.
They credit him for that, and it's like, fine, maybe he worked on their defense. That's it, whatever. But he still hasn't gotten a job since then, and there's a reason for that. It's because he made enemies of every single person in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
like his assistant coaches literally recorded their meetings with him. He made a player cry. Like, come on, man. Mark Jackson is bottom tier. I do not want him on this team. As for who they should hire, if they hire him, if they fire Luke mid-season, they got to just go with somebody on the bench and try to get somebody in the summer. I don't think you hire a new head coach in the middle of the year, where if he screws up, then you have to completely overhaul it again over the summer or whatever. Like we talked about earlier, you're just wasting time at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I totally agree. Okay, so next question was, why do the young guys and Luke get the blame for this team losing when everybody was laughing at the front office in the offseason for signing KCP, Rondo, Lance, JaVale, and Beasley? It's what we were talking about earlier.
That's a good question.
It was what I was saying last night, that blame should go to everybody. It should go to, and I thought who was it? The Kamenetsky brothers brought up an excellent point that, Magic and Pelinka, they were able to go out and get LeBron, but it's like, what can they do in terms of building a roster when they're not aiming for the elite players of the game? Right? How can they fill out the roster with those role players that do certain things? And, I think that's a fair question right now, because I think some of the fits with this roster they're not great. So, but I think those guys, with the exception of Lance, which Lance has had moments where he's been actually pretty good this year. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, just throw Lance out there early, let him take 2 or 3 shots, and if he's making them, he can play. And if he's not, just sit him for the rest of the game.
Yeah, that's fair.
But, I think JaVale has brought value. I think Rondo's brought value. I think Beasley's brought value. And KCP brings value. So I think those guys bring value. But the overall construction of the roster, I think, is fair to criticize. And that is the front office, and I think Luke and his entire staff deserve blame for how they've utilized the pieces that they've been given. Because I would think that they had some kind of say in the type of players that the team was bringing in. Right. But I think you and I have agreed on this at earlier points in the season. But players deserve blame too.
Yeah.
Like this, especially like the young guys, and I think Kuzma highlighted it last night. This team is not good enough to just go look at a Cavs team and say, all we got to do is show up and we'll win this game. You know, they've got to show up and bring it every night. And right now they're just not.
I mean, if you think about it this way, last night they effectively played with their roster from last year that won 35 games, minus probably their two best players from that year in Julius Randle and Brook Lopez.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's annoying that they lose to the Cavs because they had, again, won 8 games. But, like, it's not completely shocking either. Like, it's not a good team without LeBron. And everybody deserves blame for that. And this is why it's really lazy analysis to say, man, fire Luke, that's going to change everything. Like, the roster construction isn't good. And it's not like, oh, every individual piece that Magic and Pelinka signed was bad, because, like you said, every single one of them has brought value at some point this year. Even like a guy like Lane Stevenson, who I am not a huge fan of. Like, everybody has brought something to the table. It's just the collection of them doesn't make sense together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know. It's like I said, some of the fits are just kind of clunky, and the way the roster was built, they weren't built to shoot. And they shoot a lot of threes with guys that aren't great shooters.
Yeah.
They're capable. They're capable to have those nights where they make a lot, but they're, as we've seen, they're capable of missing a lot too. So, yeah. One response to our questions tweet was just to talk Melo. I'm going to respectfully decline.
LaMelo?
Nope, that'd be Carmelo Anthony, still under contract with the Houston Rockets.
They might need him. Clint Cavilla's out. Hey, Carmelo at the 5.
Carmelo at the 5, baby. This is a question for you specifically. I mean, I know I go to a Mountain West school.
Oh no.
But is UNLV a party school?
I don't know. They're definitely not an academics or athletics school, so they might as well be a party school. Boom, roasted.
Honey, why would you discredit your alma mater like that?
Hey man, come
on. Oh man. All right. And he did offer a follow-up question. He says, does it eat at you that D'Angelo Russell, Julius Randle, and Thomas Bryant are flourishing on other rosters?
Nah. I mean, I'm mostly just happy for them. Like, I was really upset about the D'Angelo thing, but it fairly directly led to getting us LeBron, so it's okay now. Thomas Bryant, I mean, we can like talk about how maybe they should have kept him over Zubats, but I don't know how much of a difference that makes. Julius Randle is probably the one I'm most upset about, just because I think they could have kept him, but who knows what was going on behind the scenes with that. But I'm mostly just happy for them. I love, like, especially D'Lo and Randall. Like, Thomas Bryant wasn't here long enough for me to really have any sort of like huge affinity towards them. But I love D'Lo and Julius, so I'm just super happy for them.
That's pretty much how I feel. Like, I still root for those guys because I think they got kind of a raw deal with the Lakers. I thought D'Angelo especially came in and was given probably the worst coach to deal with, a coach that I don't think really ever wanted him, and really didn't like him. And then Magic didn't like him, apparently. And so, yeah, I mean, they both kind of got a raw deal, but I think they're both examples of why you can't just judge young players in year 2 or year 3, even, when they're at a young age. Like, D'Angelo's in year 4 and he's finally starting to make that leap. Sometimes it takes time. They're not all Kobe Bryant or LeBron James, where they're superstars by the age of 21.
Yeah.
It takes these guys some time, and D'Angelo's starting to find his way. Julius made a big leap last year, and he's playing really well this year.
D'Angelo's always a Laker because he just roasted the hell out of the Celtics tonight.
Yeah. he did hit a dagger against us. Oh man, straight to the heart. Yeah, no, I'm with you though. I'm mostly just happy for those guys. I want to see them succeed because I think they got a raw deal, not only from maybe the previous coaching staff that they had, the front office, and the fans. I thought they got mistreated by fans that came in. I mean, they were expected to be great right away, and most times that just doesn't happen for young players, especially guys that come into the league at 19 years old. They're not all Luka Doncic or whatever. Those guys are dime a dozen. So I'm happy for them. I wish they were still in the team, but yeah. All right, let's burn through these last couple questions. One was, should LeBron fire Luke for incompetence, and can he fire Magic too, or does he not have that authority? Don't think he has that authority. I think only Genie Bus has that authority. Let's see. Can we blame the lack of a shooting coach for the shooting? I think you can blame the construction of the roster more so.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
By far.
And then we had, let's see, one more question. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. From David Chia, the Ivica Zubats Stan himself. It's not even a zoo related question. I'm a little disappointed.
Whoa.
But he asks, who among the Lakers outsiders is the best free throw shooter, and is that person better than 68%?
Every single one of us shoots 69%. Every single one.
That's exactly what I told him. Yeah. So I'm glad we're on the same page.
I mean, it's 100% Gary. He has a mixtape on YouTube. None of us do. Although, if there's people out here in LA, I know everybody wants to be like a filmmaker and stuff. If somebody wants to make a mixtape of me missing layups and shooting bricks, I am all for it. Let's do this.
My junior year of high school, I shot 83% from the free throw line. So Lakers, I'll take a minimum deal. Get me out there. But yeah, no. But nowadays, though, we all shoot 69% as a team. Everybody. And it's not an average. Well, it is an average because we all shoot the same exact percentage. But I digress. All right. That's going to do it for us. And this went on a little longer than I thought. But that was a lot of fun. I thought that was a good discussion.
Very therapeutic.
Yeah, it is. I feel so much better. I will not feel better tomorrow. I will not be able to watch the Laker game, and I don't know if you will be able to. I mean, you will be watching Nevada, I'm sure. So I'll be at the game. So hopefully, I'm happy and Honi is not. No offense.
I mean, we're both going to be unlucky because we're losing by 20, or unhappy because we're losing by 20 to the Bulls. But I'll be happy about my college team.
Oh man. Yeah. So tomorrow will be an interesting night. I feel like it's a big game for the Lakers. They need to come out and send a message that they can show up and beat bad teams. Because if they lose tomorrow, oh man, prepare yourselves.
Do you think if we win by like 20 or something, the Bulls will take back the contract extension that they're apparently giving to Jim Boylan already?
I don't know, man. I think we've seen it once already this year. If the Bulls beat the Lakers by 20, he might get fired. So
I'm really enjoying this thing where we found Jim Boylan, who's basically the white Byron Scott.
It's amazing, man. But yeah, I don't know. Tomorrow's a big one, so hopefully the Lakers come out and put together a better performance, because I do not want to be on Twitter if they lose tomorrow. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thank you to everybody that sent us questions. Thanks to those of you that tuned in live here on YouTube, and those of you that might listen to this later on iTunes. We also appreciate you, which brings me to how I'm going to end this thing by plugging where you can find the podcast. As always, we live stream these on YouTube. So if you subscribe to us on YouTube, you can turn notifications on. You can watch us live, and you can watch us that way. You can listen to us on iTunes. You can subscribe to us there as well. Also, you can do the same thing on Podbean. And of course, you can find all of our content on LakersOutsiders.com. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, all that stuff. We're on social media. So, and you should be too. It's 2019, for crying out loud. But yeah, no, this was fun. Like I said, I appreciate everybody that kind of interacted with us, and you guys were involved in the podcast. And I always love that. I always love the feedback, especially when it's professional or yeah, that's
especially when it's not about me going to UNLV. I'm still mad at you, Seb, whoever you are.
Oh, Honi and his running rebels. All right, yeah. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. I don't know if we'll be potting tomorrow. Like I said, I will be at the Boise State Nevada game, so I don't know what time exactly I'll be home, but we'll pot again soon. Hopefully we're talking about better things. Hopefully we're talking about LeBron coming back. We'll see. But until then, stay safe out there. Take out your anger on these losses in a healthy manner, please. And let's hope the Lakers get some wins. So for Honi Ahmadian, I'm Gary Kester signing off.
Shout out LA teachers.